welcome everyone. It is a really cold Sunday morning, so thank you very much for coming this morning. This is a really good opportunity for us to really talk about our experience in junior football, particularly as we're all women, and really just to get your perspective on what your experience has been like, and also get some discussion going on, what we could do in the future, what we could do a bit better. But it's been a really exciting time for me, probably over the last 5 or 6 years now. I think 2016 for all of us was the year that girls football really took off, particularly for our league. That was the year that we went from having a handful of girls who were playing in mixed teams to having thousands of girls playing. So we've got about 5 or 6 years experience since then. So it's really a bit of a chance to reflect a bit on what's been happening over those years, positive and negative, and just have a bit of a chat. So I'm just going to get the discussion going. I've got lots of little discussion points here. The first one is, how did you get involved in the world of football in the very beginning? And just because you're sitting next to me, Marisa, I can start with you. How did you get involved?
Well, through my daughters actually. So yeah, both of them play footy, and my eldest, who's now 19, started playing when she was about 14, and she really had never taken any interest before and whatnot. Just went down with a friend, and so just started out getting involved on match day and that way. And then when my younger daughter joined a couple of years, I think it was the next year, took the team manager role and started out that way, and just got to understand that sort of what happens on match day and around the club and things like that. But just through the kids, and just really enjoyed it. I've always been a footy tragic, so it's nice to have them interested in footy. They don't like to watch it, but they love to play. So really good.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Well, I was not a football tragic. I didn't know anything about AFL. My partner loves AFL, but same thing obviously through the kids. So our son played under 9s, and for the first year I just went along and watched the games, and then the second year they needed a team manager, so I put my hand up, and then I guess through that you become more involved. You learn how the club works. I am somebody who'll give something a go, so I ended up from team manager, kept being team manager, then joined the committee, just helping out organising social things. Then that grows to, then you become the secretary, and then you become the vice president, and then the next thing you know, you're the president of a junior football club, which amazes the friends who knew you when you were really young. But and through that, I used to have a catch cry when I was first team manager. I said, I don't know anything about footy. Don't ask me any questions about football. I can organise stuff. But then by the time I was president, I was like, I know a lot more about football, and I guess also about the thing about being an administrator is you need to know about how the game works, and what to do on game day, and how the whole system works in the league, which I found very interesting. And I guess, the common theme is you do it for your kids, and stuff. And when our youngest daughter, she was part of we had 2 teams at the Preston Bryant's girls teams, and that was really exciting. That was something that I found, so proud of being involved in that. So that was terrific, and then of course COVID hit, so that changed things.
Changed.
Yeah.
What about you, Sue Ellen?
So I think the journey's similar. I did it because I was involved with my son's footy. So he started with Auskick. So we're down there at the local Auskick centre, and he loved it. And then of course he joined the local football team, being the Ashy Redbacks, and again similar journey. Started as the team manager, did that for a few years, shared it I think for a year or so after that with another parent, and then I've moved more into the trainer role. So I haven't done sort of anything administratively at Ashy beyond that. But then the opportunity came up to join the YJFL on the board, and I thought, how fantastic to be able to have a different lens on football. And again, Suki, to your point about, what actually goes on behind the scenes to to run a club and then a league, and it's far more. I guess there's so many skills that you can bring to that, even if you actually don't know, the difference between the wing and centre half back. So I think, which of course you learn as you go along. And I am from a footy tragic family, so I think there's so many other things that women can bring to football. And I guess now we're having a different conversation than we might have, say, in 2016, where we females know a lot more about football organically now than having to sort of do a quick learn. But it's such an exciting sport to be involved in. I love the way that it brings kids together, all different kids, all different levels of skills that are kept obviously up to a certain age group where they start sort of being a bit more skill-based. But I just loved seeing kids that, didn't have the ball handling skills that my child might have, but all the kids are just in there having a lot of fun, and all the people wanting to donate their time, volunteering. And I think that really motivates me.
Yeah, definitely. What about you, Adrienne?
Same as everyone else, I came into footy through my sons. I didn't have a huge knowledge of footy before that, even though the family was footy oriented, and my husband's an absolutely mad, grown up in football, played, coached, all of those sorts of things. Not a huge background, but when my older son started playing at Templestowe, I was kind of just one of those parents helped out every week in the usual roles, umpire, escort, timekeeping roles, those sorts of things. When my younger son started in under 8s, I put my hand up to do the team manager role because, all the new parents, no one really wants to put their hands up for those sorts of positions. So I said, okay, I'll do that. And just stepped through with that, did that for 3 or 4 years, then stepped into the team manager coordinator role after that. Once our other team manager coordinator left the club. And did that up until a couple of years ago when we sort of went into COVID. So into 2021, when we were sort of looking unsure about seasons, what was happening, etc. Our other president stepped down, and again, no one was putting their hand up, and I went, okay. So I kind of was thrown in the deep end a little bit there, because I hadn't really had any sort of executive experience in a committee. It was more general committee, that sort of thing. So it was a quick, steep learning curve, but it's been really rewarding. So that's been my journey, I guess.
Yeah, and I thank you for that. I think that's the thing. What I find with junior footy is you just got to put your hand up. Most people who get involved haven't really done this kind of stuff before, so it's just saying, I'm not going to be scared of the unknown. I'm just going to jump in and help out. And I think there's a real appreciation, particularly within the league, of the role of the volunteers. That our league just wouldn't run without volunteers. So I think it's really important that even people who feel they don't have the experience or they don't have the knowledge or the skills, I think particularly women who might feel that they don't know much about football. I mean, I didn't have a bit like you, Suki. I didn't even know that football existed until I came to Australia quite a few years ago now. But it's more saying, well, okay, I might not know much about football itself, but there's other things I can do, and there's other things that I can help with. There's people round about me that are willing to help me, and then just to kind of take a deep breath and jump in. And then when my daughter got involved in football, that's when I thought, I've really got to step up here. Because part of it is about being a role model as well, and I really got a lot more involved at that time. And I found our club president at the time, who was Phil Murdoch, he was fantastic. He was really, really welcoming, really encouraging. Also, I got involved in coaching, which was a real step out of my comfort zone. Even just going on the coaching course was, the other person who was really helpful every week for me was Glenn Mead, who was the team manager, the coach of the team that I was involved in coaching. I was the assistant coach, and Glenn was just fantastic. The first practice match that we had, he said to me, "Are you okay? You're all right?" And I'm going, "Yeah, I'm fine." I was just trotting along behind him, and he kind of looked at me and he went, "Now, do you know the names of all the positions?" And I'm like, oh, maybe you could just run through it.
Have you got the ball?
Yeah.
And he was just, well, because he kind of realised what level I was at. And he was just fantastic. He'd be actually there helping me and advising me and encouraging me and letting me know if I was doing things well, and obviously letting me know if I was doing things that weren't so good. But he was just fantastic. And I think that's a really important thing with getting women involved in football is having those people around about you that you can ask, but who are also there to encourage you and help you. So thank you, Glenn, if you're watching.
Yeah, I think another thing is for I know me coming in, and I do a bit of coaching as well. Is that sometimes women bring a different perspective and they talk to the kids differently. I think some kids need a different sort of voice, and a lot of the girls don't have that base level understanding of the game that some of the boys do. But even some of the boys coming in playing, the younger ones, they don't have that base level. But sometimes the coaches who are really experienced sort of forget that and talk a bit above the kids. So one thing I'm really mindful of is really explaining what does it mean in practice. When you say, even things people yell out at the football, like it doesn't make any sense to a lot of the kids. Like, what do you mean? And you really just to be able to put it into terms they understand and explain it to them in a way that they're going to actually, it's going to click for them. And I think that's something that perhaps female voices who maybe come in from a different sort of pathway into footy can give that different perspective to kids, and it's a bit more welcoming for them, so they don't sort of feel excluded by the language or anything, because I think that's a really big thing. They need to be able to, they're not going to be able to follow coaches' instructions if they don't understand, what the position, what do you mean when I'm playing on the wing? What does that actually mean? What am I supposed to do? So some of those things are actually, it seems silly to explain to a 14-year-old, but my daughter didn't start playing until she was 14. So there's a lot of kids who come in at different ages and come into the game, especially after COVID, who've missed some of those foundational things. That's really critical to give them that inclusive language. I think is really critical.
I think that this idea of a different voice, or the female voice being a different voice, is really important. Not just with the kids who are playing, but also at the administrative level as well. So I find that with the time that I've been on the board, it's been really important having that female voice or voices at the table, because there's a slightly different perspective. I think it's really important that we have that. We're in a position now, I think, with our league that we've got 3 female board members and 4 male board members. It's not just being male or being female, it's also looking at each of our backgrounds. We've all got quite different backgrounds, and each person's got something slightly different to say. And even if you ask the same question to each of the 7 people, because we've all got different experiences, we all look at the problem in a slightly different way, with a different lens, and I think that's really important. Over the last few years, I think there's been an increase in women involved at the administrative level in the league, not just as team managers, but also getting involved as club presidents and on the board. And I think it's really important to have that diverse view, because it adds to the league. It doesn't take away from it, actually adds to it. Quite interested to know how you think football administration has changed over the last few years. I mean, if you look back to when you first got involved to where we are now, have you seen many changes?
Tricky one to answer, because I guess for me, I wasn't as involved in the committee. I think obviously things change over time as you get a rollover of, your executive committee and even your general committee. And as you said, the different perspectives and the different backgrounds people come from, obviously it is going to change. I think with the introduction of girls footy, it has changed thinking a lot. It's made us think more logistically in some respects. I mean, you're looking at, your change rooms and how that works. If you've got boys and girls teams playing at the same time, you're looking at inclusiveness. So maybe how we run the club when we were just a boys' club, how we include the girls, how we make them feel safe and secure, how they treat each other. Those sorts of things have changed. So I don't know whether it's administrative per se, or whether it's just more the way that we're thinking generally about clubs, how they're run, those sorts of things. I think has really changed, and the girls' footy's had a lot to do with that, I think.
But I think that impacted the administration because you have to start thinking about language.
Yeah.
I mean, it was always, because I started, I don't know, in 2012, I think was Felix's first year of football. So, it was always about the players and community, but I think that actually has widened, like that brief is much bigger now because inclusiveness means something quite different now to what it's not just about males and females playing footy, it's about the language you use, it's about well-being. I think that there's a much stronger responsibility of the clubs on players' well-being that there didn't necessarily used to be traditionally, I think, when it was more of a male domain. And I think that you have to think about how do you support all the players, not just the good players, and it's not just about being drafted to the AFLM or the AFLW. There's actually a lot more issues, and I think with somebody who said that the church no longer has that traditional place as the centre of the community, but often the football club can have that place as being somewhere where people come together and also look for support. So I think that's impacted the administration of clubs quite a bit. Like you have to, in some good ways, but also it's a pretty arduous task for clubs to do. So I think that's why, as a board, we've said we need to somehow find a way to relieve that burden and maybe come up with some framework that all the clubs can use, because it's a lot to deal with, especially when it's not, when you're the president of a club and you're like, I don't have a background in, social welfare and stuff. So I'm not sure what we're meant to be doing and where do you draw that line? Child safety had a big impact on that. It was like, hang on, how much responsibility do we actually have?
Yeah, and I think too, the community clubs are really a reflection of broader society. So when you look at all the conversations going on now around respect and, people giving, kids, particularly kids learning about giving consent and what that means, like that does reflect in the way we operate community clubs, because, you're just a reflection of bigger society. And so, I think particularly that respect message and does have different connotations for female players, and also things like female umpires or umpires generally, just having a bit more human face to a lot of that, which was probably just, wasn't there a few years ago. It's reflected in the AFL and the AFLW and, in society more broadly. And I think, it's for us as clubs, we've got to sort of step up into that space as well and really, reflect what's going on more broadly.
So it's definitely a change for the better.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it's a much broader understanding of welfare issues and well-being, physical well-being, but also mental well-being that we didn't really have before.
And COVID's exacerbated or sped some of those discussions up, hasn't it? Because it really has had an impact. And I think, the acceptance around children that are obviously from different ethnic backgrounds and children that have got, just sort of discovering their sexuality, and there's some, a lot of big conversations and support that clubs can provide, but needing to have those, I guess, experts, and it's something that we're obviously looking at as a league as well, making sure that we've got the right advice coming in as to how to manage it. But I think, to go back to your question, Ishbel, I think in the 3 years that I've been involved, I probably haven't seen a metamorphic change in administration, but it's sort of, to me, it feels like it's a simmer. And it is something that's really ready to sort of take to the next level in terms of females and women being accepted into administrative roles, but I kind of don't feel it's changed significantly. Somewhat that's been impacted by COVID, of course, and we haven't gotten all the games and the clubs haven't been able to be the place that they wanted to be, during those 2 years. But I sort of feel like it hasn't been a leaps and bouncing, but I feel I can't sort of articulate that with facts, but I just sort of feel like it's sort of on the verge of something pretty special.
So with that, what sort of barriers do you think there are to women being involved in administration of football? Do you think it's that there hasn't been that really big change because there's still some barriers to overcome? Or what have you noticed?
Yeah, so I think, and I guess it's one of the reasons I'm involved, is to show that you can be and you can make a contribution, and maybe it's just in one part of the business of football. So you don't have to be everyone or everything to everyone. So I think some of the barriers that, that visibility of people already in those roles, and we were talking a little bit about Nicole Livingston before, and just seeing someone like her with her background, having been a sort of, I suppose, professional swimmer, and I just think she's such an amazing spokeswoman for women in administration. So I just think there's more access perhaps to people like that, to be able to see and hear their story and sort of say, I can do that. But I think people like us equally can make that sort of contribution. It doesn't have to be somebody that's in a senior role or a senior paid role in AFL. But I think, that access to people, and I guess that's why this is a really good conversation to have, because we can provide that access more deeply to people.
Yeah, I think it's also about creating an environment where, women feel comfortable and supported. I think that's often evident if you look at the clubs that have had female presidents. They are, it is that they have already set up that environment which is probably a bit more supportive and a bit more forward thinking, and I think that it's about how do you get women involved in those clubs that maybe have a more conservative attitude and haven't made that leap. And that is part of this discussion, is that we said if you can show females being involved in footy, whether it's playing, whether it's coaching, whether it's administration, and talking about how that makes them feel, I think it's really, that's an important, like Ishbel mentioned well-being, and I was like, that feeling of, I did it because I liked the people, I thought it was a lovely club, and I liked that feeling, and I liked how I felt, helping out and being involved with our kids and the other kids, and you form relationships with all of those kids, I've seen them, our son's still playing, and you get this sort of, you're proud of them, and you have this lovely, you feel connected to them, which is really important. And with females playing footy, I can remember our daughter saying, it made her feel good and strong, and I think it's a really positive thing the way girls feel when they play footy, and I don't think they necessarily get that from other sports. So I think having those types of discussions and saying, you don't have to be an expert football player or an expert on football to become involved, because I think that women sometimes, we don't necessarily go, I can do that. Like men will go, oh, do you want to coach? Sure, I can do that. They don't think, oh, am I good enough? I don't know, I don't know if I'm good enough. I don't know if I'm good enough to coach them. I'm not sure about it and stuff. I think, we tend to hold back a little bit. And so I think providing that environment, I've talked about saying, there needs to be, maybe coaching courses for women that only have women in them and are perhaps maybe run by women, so that, it's again about safe environments and what you're saying about giving people the confidence to have a go, and explaining the language to them and stuff. Because you said, Ishbel, when you went to the coaching course, you were just at sea. I can remember talking to you, and you said it was like they were talking a foreign language, Whereas if you were in an environment that was all, women at your level, you might feel differently.
When I did the coaching course, it was actually really good fun, and everyone was really helpful, but I really didn't know what was going on. So but the feedback that I gave after I did that initial coaching course was maybe for women, and it's maybe not just women, but maybe for what would be useful for some women is to have almost a level 0 coaching course rather than a level 1, where the level 0 is going through the really, really, really basic stuff. You don't know what you don't know. So, you turn up at this course and think, I don't really know what's going on here. So I think that what would be really useful is just trying to look at things through the lens of someone who's different. So rather than saying, let's just do what we've always done, because that's worked in the past and that's been really good. If we want to encourage a different group of people, not different as in instead of what we had before, but an additional group of people to get involved in this fantastic sport, and what do we need to do that's relevant and appropriate for that group? And it's not just women, it may be people who come from different cultural backgrounds.
Absolutely, where footy's just not a...
Yeah, we've got such a large proportion of people in Australia who weren't born here, who live here now, who maybe didn't grow up with this sport. So what sort of things can we do to get that group of people involved, because what I know from my experience is once you do get involved in football, it's really good fun and it's really rewarding, not just for me but for my kids and for the family and everyone else. So
it's certainly what I say, at the club to people who are thinking about volunteering. I say, you tell me how much time you've got, even if it's half an hour a week, and I'll find you a job. Like, there is something that can suit every, if you never ever come to the club, I can still find you a job. You know what I mean? Like, there are that many things to do behind the scenes that can be done, at home, at night, whenever. Or it might be that you want to come down and you want to spend an hour or two at the club every weekend or during the week at training or whatever. There is a role for everyone. And I think you're right, it's just opening that door, and perhaps, there are some things we can do. There is a lot of support material, but it's probably just that overwhelming feeling that some people have that, it's a lot to take on. But I think the thing we forget is, women might not be expert in football, but they're pretty good on kids. They know kids pretty well. So, if anyone's been involved in coaching those really young kids, it's like herding cats. Like, it's not really that much. You don't need to be a super skilled footballer to run those sessions. You just need to be really good at keeping kids engaged. And, who's better at that than, the mums. And so, I think, it's about saying, it's about providing people with options, because everyone's time poor, and we're seeing that now with all volunteers. It's really hard to get people involved, and just being able to do something for as little as half an hour is just a foot in the door. I think that's really important, and it does show the kids that it's a way to maintain a relationship with your kids, because I know I've got two teenagers. If you don't have a common something common where you're going to spend time with them each week set, you can lose them just in their rooms on their phones for so sometimes building those relationships through football is a really good way to maintain a bit of a dialogue with your kids that's not got all the pressure of other stuff around, like homework and school and everything else you deal with, but, still gives you that in, to talk about stuff and spend time. Like, I think the 15 minutes after training or games is probably the most my daughter ever speaks. So because they've got the adrenaline running and they've just had a really good, fun experience, and they want to chat about it. So I think that's a really good message to send. And like we said before, once you get involved, you just get the rewards. It's fantastic, but it's getting people to step in,
And I guess you're also setting up, aren't you, that your daughter, hopefully one day, seeing what you have contributed and the value that's added, even though she might not see that today, but, gee, Mum did that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's one of my motivations. Mum's doing this and Mum's doing that to help out so that our team is better and we can run on game day or whatever it is. But I'm hoping that my son might look at that and say, well, maybe I could do some coaching when I'm a couple of years, once I'm eligible, I can do the umpire, and how can I give back? So sort of providing that example of, if we all pitch in and help, we can really make this community amazing.
And it's the same reason why, you want their dad to cook dinner.
Yes.
It's exactly the same reason. You want them to see that anyone can do anything, it's not just about men do this and women do that, So I think that's really critical.
And also, I think teaching them that things don't just happen. There is a certain sense of entitlement, a little bit for young people generally. And so, because the kids used to say to me, well, why are you volunteering? Why do you have to do it? And I said, well, somebody has to do it. So I'm going to do it. But there's also a whole lot of other people doing it, and your coaches and everybody. So it's about showing them that you do have a broader responsibility to the community. And it also feels really good. That's a bonus of it. That when you do that, then and you learn stuff. You learn new skills and you meet new people and you make really interesting connections and stuff. And I think it also, I know for me, it's given me a lot of confidence, going from knowing nothing about football, developed quite a passion for it, probably more about the broader game rather than just actual footy itself, but the communities it builds and stuff. That I was at a breakfast and Peggy O'Neill was there, and sort of put my big girl pants on and went up and introduced myself to her because I think she's amazing. Like, she is an amazing role model and stuff. And I was like, I would never have had the confidence to do that, you know, even 5 or 6 years ago, you know. But it's from that thing of putting yourself out there and learning new skills and gaining confidence. It's a really good thing to do.
Yes. So I think the message that I'm getting here is to encourage other women to get involved in administration of football. Is don't feel that you can't do it just because you haven't done it before, because it doesn't matter what you do in life, and you've got to learn somewhere. And it's really to say that, you know, that there is a community that's here that values volunteers and that are there to support you. And that even though, as you said, Suki, you might not know anything about football when you start, but by the time you finish, you know, you're going to be an expert. You know, so and that's how you become experts.
And the administration of the YJFL, and I'm not just saying this as board member because I have sung their praises when I was a team manager up to president. You know, the support that the administration staff give you, you know, from being a team manager to being coach to having a new role on a committee to being the club president has been really fantastic. And I think that, you know, having had lots of contact with them as a team manager, I wouldn't have felt confident going to a president role without knowing that you have those connections. And then even to coming on the board, it was my experience as a club member, you know, that I went, I reckon I can get involved and say something, you know.
I think one of the things I'm interested in is, because it's one of the questions on the sheet here, talking about have you noticed an increase in the participation of women in the administration of clubs? I would say my view is that women have always been involved in the administration of clubs. It's just that the women haven't necessarily been as visible. So, you know, I think we've got 32 clubs now, 3 female club presidents. So if you look at that, you say, well, maybe only 10% of our presidents are women. I would say, well, okay, that's right, but it's not only 10% of our volunteers that are women. So just interested in your take on that. I would say that women have been involved for a long time. But what would you say to women who are maybe involved doing half an hour a week or an hour a week doing a little bit here and there? What would you say to them to encourage them to maybe set their sights at becoming a club president or getting involved in a more visible way in the clubs?
Yes, I'd say it's actually not as scary as you think it's going to be. There is a lot of support, as we've already talked about today, particularly not just from within the club, but other clubs, other presidents, up the league. You know, there's a whole stack of resources out there these days that you can access. We've got volunteer support officer Jacinta, who's fantastic, who's another layer of support. It's just having a go. I think it really is just having a go and asking for help when you need it. That's the big thing. You don't have to know it all. You don't have to be the expert and the one that, you know, as soon as someone comes to you, you have to know the answer. You know, you can say, actually, I don't know, or I'm not sure, I'll get back to you, or whatever it is. You can involve other people, and it's really, really rewarding. You know, it's amazing. I mean, I've always felt that our club's been very supportive and very inclusive, but coming into executive and into president role, you just get to know people so much better, and the kids particularly. So I've developed quite a great relationship with some of our female, not having girls myself, some of our female players, which has been really fantastic, and getting to know them, seeing their perspectives, going and watching them, supporting them when they've done their YJFL rep team stuff, that sort of thing. So I think there's a lot to gain from it, and personally too, I've learnt skills that I wouldn't have learnt before. So you were saying, Suki, before that, you know, you wouldn't have the confidence to talk to people. This is not something I would have done a few years ago, talking on camera. I don't do interviews. I'm not a public speaker. You know, it's not something I've ever been good at. And it's still not something I'm really comfortable with, but it's something that I feel more comfortable with because you are kind of, you do that more, and you're almost more forced into some of those things. So facing some of your fears, personal growth, those sorts of things. So it's not just what you're doing for the club and you know, the wider football community. It's what you're doing for yourself.
The games, definitely. Well, as you know, I was nervous about even doing this session today.
Well, I think, and just following on from what you're saying, I think, on that journey potentially to club president, is that, everyone, I guess, has got to look at the time commitment. And I know you were saying you've got some good strategies about, I'm happy to take half an hour of your time, but I guess looking at how much time in the future you might have available, and maybe as your children are getting older and you have to do less running around and things like that, you may be able to say, look, I can see myself perhaps putting my hand up to be the club president or vice president in the next few years. So I think, not feeling that you've got to jump into that sort of everything. And really ease yourself into, maybe you are the team manager liaison, then maybe you are the treasurer or the secretary, and then maybe you are the vice president. I think it's such a great pathway to build the skills and knowledge and your own personal confidence. Because I think clubs are screaming out for people to put their hands up. So I think there's that support. People innately want you to succeed, so they'll do whatever they can, even if they can't donate or volunteer a lot of their own personal time. So I think one of my messages would be, don't feel like you've got to sort of jump into that job next year, but maybe you're sort of looking at it and saying, look, in the next few years that could be a role, and maybe identify that with the current president, and there could be some mentoring or as time allows. As your personal time allows.
Closing remarks and anything else you would say, Suki, to prospective women who want to get involved in administration?
Yeah, I think it really is, just have a go. Like you really, the club can't run without volunteers. Clubs can't run without volunteers. The league can't run without volunteers. And I used to laugh a little bit because people would say, I just want to watch my child play football. And I would say, well, we all want to do that, And so if everybody wants to do that, and the more volunteers that you have, as you said, Marisa, that the load is spread, and stuff. And so, if everybody gets involved, then, you can watch at least half of the game or something like that, and everything.
I think the most important thing is to remember that the problems that you're solving, like I just consider myself a problem solver when I'm in my role, and they're not necessarily, I would say maybe 5% of the problems I solve are football centric. Like everything else, they're human problems. They're people coming to you saying, look, I want my kid to play, but I can't afford it, or there's issues that's going on, off the field or whatever it is. But most of the stuff I'm dealing with, or the things I'm trying to solve, just human, natural problems that we come up against every day. So there's nothing, you don't need specialist knowledge for that. You just need to listen, and I think if you have a football problem, you've got plenty of people around who can give you that football knowledge, there's people at the club, at every club, who live and breathe it, and who will tell you in a heartbeat what they think about, what the consequences of this decision will be, So you don't have to really worry about that. It's about, but I think the thing you bring is just bringing your experience and your knowledge and setting that example for your kids and showing them that in those sort of roles, as women, you can be a leader, and I think that's really critical. And the girls who I, coach, who are, they're going through, tough times in society, and football is a way to give them just confidence that they can't get in other ways, in their bodies, in what they can achieve. And, that's what I love watching.
Have confidence and belief in yourself, I think, is really important. Like, I think as women, we sometimes don't have enough of that. There's a bit of self-doubt that creeps in, but have the confidence to give it a go. And that then sets an example for, all the other females in the club that, if she can do it, then I can do it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much. I think this has been a really good discussion. Thanks for being so honest and candid and talking about your own experience. I guess I would just encourage all women, or mums or sisters or aunties or whoever who are even thinking about getting involved in football. It is definitely worthwhile. And for our girls and young women who are playing, that it doesn't end when you finish at the end of your junior football career. There are lots of ways to keep football alive and well and part of your life. Whether it's continuing to play getting involved in umpiring, getting involved in coaching, or getting involved in the administration of the clubs or the leagues. There's a real future there for young women, girls and women. So thank you very much.
Thank you.